Good morning. I'd like to welcome you all to the Board of Selectmen budget hearings where department heads will present their budget. Today is Thursday, the 16th of January. We'll start the meeting at 8:37, and the first department to come aboard would be library. Sandy, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Esteemed colleagues.
Morning, Sandy.
I'm Sandy Ruoff, Director of the library, and to my left is Brendan Smith, Treasurer of the Guilford Library Association Board of Directors. And in the audience, we have two Board of Director members, Ralph Schuman and Marcella Hurhane, and the Assistant Director of the library, Patty Baldwin. I don't really have a lot to say, except that the board and I and the staff who helped prepare this budget tried to be mindful of the directives of the selectmen, but still put in enough money to pay the light bill, etc. So it's a very spare budget, but I believe it will get us through the 12 months of 14-15. I rearranged some of the categories a little bit. Since 2008, our book funds from the town went from $22,500 to $2,500 because of necessary cuts that all departments were instructed to make to try to keep the whole budget at a level that the taxpayers could support. This year, in another line, electronic materials, which supports all the non-print materials in the library, such as downloadable books, e-books, online databases, all the things that people have come to expect the public library to provide. That line had also been cut, and I'm bringing that up from $10,000 to $12,000. But the total increase in the operating budget is $850 on the bottom line. We also have the salary budget to consider. And because of retirements last year and some restructuring, we are actually at a lower salary number than last year. So thanks to Sheila, she has pointed out that our total request right now is down 1.8%.
Okay, thank you. And the directions that came from here was to keep it at a minimum, but you can pay the light bill.
Okay.
Makes a nicer ambiance. Candles, I don't know. A lot of paper in that. Okay, any questions? Any comments?
I would just make one comment, because you made the statement that $2,500 was going to books. We should point out for those that don't have the books in front of it, that's only from the town funds. You have other funds which, so you're buying more than $2,500 in books.
Currently, our budgeted number for books is $50,000, and our budgeted number for electronic materials is $22,000, $72,000. In the operating budget, which comes to $305,850, the library contributes $110,250 towards those funds. So that's where the books budget really comes from. It comes from the fundraising efforts of the Board of Directors, some small monies from the state of Connecticut, and some monies from the library endowment. Not shown in the operating budget are efforts from the Friends of the Library, who raise about $70,000 a year for the library, but we do not include that in our operating budget because that's a sum that could change every year. So this year, their fiscal year is different months than ours, but basically it overlaps. They will be contributing $42,000 to books and materials. So if we did not have the Friends support for the books, we would have a book budget, but we would not be able to provide the range and diversity and number of materials that we can with putting the Friends money together with the town and the library money.
Could you comment on community support, traffic, how much activity you're getting in the library from residents, specifically on the electronic delivery services?
We circulate about 300,000 items a year. 300,000 items leave the library in some format, either electronically or physically, and 300,000 items come back. I would say that the electronic part of it maybe represents about 20% of that 300,000. Ebook use skyrocketed about 4 years ago, but now the trend in the country is where it's kind of flattened, not dropped, but not peaking. But and we're finding people who read are reading in formats of the format that works for them at the moment, and so print books are still by far outweighing e-use, but e-use continues to grow.
And your residential traffic?
The residential traffic, you mean what, the people walking in and out? I would say it averages between 500 people a day to maybe 800 people a day in and out, because we have a lot of, we offer many programs for all ages, and last year our program attendance equaled the population of the town, 23,000 people, not all in one day. And that includes programs for children from birth through 6th grade, and then we're dealing with tween programs, and then teen programs, and then programs for adults.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Sandy, on your capital side, you have $9,600. It's the same as this current year we're in. How many computers are you replacing?
We replace the public computers on a rotational basis. They were all new when the library reopened opened on our present site after the renovation in 2008. I think that $9,600 probably represents about 4 computers when you add in all the peripherals that are needed for each one.
And what is the turnover in years? I mean, how many?
Well, technically, I think the school of thought is 3 years, but honestly, we keep them longer than that if they're working. We just don't throw them out when they hit the 3-year mark.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Brendan, you want to add anything?
Cindy's done a great job.
Yeah, she does. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The right agenda. Okay. Now we're ahead of schedule.
Now we'll have fun.
Who said that? Okay. Trace, do you want to call over to Park and Rec and tell them that?
How you doing?
Sheila, is there anything you want to say while we have this break, waiting for
Just to
Park
put
and
you on
Rec?
the spot.
And to the members who weren't here yesterday, yeah, of the Board of Finance.
What's that?
No, I can't think of anything right now.
Okay, just one. I asked if she wanted to brief us on anything, or particularly, people who weren't here yesterday. So.
Can you
I
think?
just missed the front end of the meeting. I got about halfway through.
Yesterday,
Yes.
yeah, it was basically.
I missed the golf course discussion.
Pardon me?
I missed the golf course discussions. Can we start that over?
That was the longest one.
That was half the meeting.
That's why we wind up an hour behind on that, okay?
Rick's on his way.
Okay, good. Mike, we'll take about a 5-minute break until Rick gets here. It's not his fault, we're running ahead.
Joe, since we're on camera,
All right, we'll reconvene with the presentation from Parks and Recs. Good morning. Just as a housekeeping detail, let us know if you want to present your budget, and then you'll accept questions, or we can ask questions as you go along. It's up to you.
I'm comfortable whatever way you're comfortable.
Okay, good, proceed.
All right, I'll just give a little basic introduction about the department. I think you know a lot of these things, but just to reiterate that we provide service for thousands of Guilford residents. In fact, about 18,000 residents were part of our programs and special events last year. And we deal with everything from the age groups from 1.5-year-olds to people in their 90s. So we cover the entire age spectrum in the community. We maintain over 100 acres of grass, 40 ball fields, 3 beaches, the green, tennis and basketball courts, 3 playgrounds, skate park. And in the winter, we remove snow from 2 miles of sidewalks, all the town parking lots, and we usually have about 3 guys that help with public works once we finish with our tasks. And then when the ice conditions allow, we remove snow from Mill Pond too for ice skating. We offer 600 classes, which are all self-supporting, and special events throughout the entire year. And then we assist with other town-wide events like the Memorial Day Parade, the 375th Committee, we assist them with the things they're doing, the tree lighting, Gilbert's Got Talent, and others. So there are a lot of events that we're associated with that are not our events, but we're assisting in various ways. Thankfully, this last year, no hurricanes, and so no emergency shelter. So we've gone through a year so far without spending a lot of hours here, so we're thankful for that. Some of the highlights of the budget we submitted, 14 of our accounts have 0 increase or decrease. The increases are, the biggest increase is in grounds maintenance, and $20,000 is in there for eliminating weeds at the beach at Lake Quantipoc. It's getting to a point where it's almost hazardous sometimes to swim. I've had calls from people, they'd be swimming in the lap lane and the weeds be wrapped around their arms and their feet as they're trying to swim through it. And then a problem that came up this year that we had never seen before is leeches. One woman told me she came out of the beach, she had out of the lake, she had 8 leeches on her body. And another woman called, and her 6-year-old kid had a leech on his calf muscle, and she said, is this a health problem? And I got a hold of Dennis Johnson and also a pediatrician, and they said, well, it's not a health issue. It's nasty. It's like, I think of the African Queen, Humphrey Bogart, when he's walking through the river, and he comes out and he's got leeches all over his body. And so in speaking with Greg Bugby from the Agricultural Experimental Station, he's an expert on lake issues, and he said that the weeds is part of the reason we have the leeches. If we get rid of the weeds, the leeches are gone. So I've contacted one company, All Habitat, and they have it's called a vacuum dredge. It's basically like almost like a leaf vacuum, it's got a hose and it just sucks the weeds right out, sucks the silt out of the bottom of the lake, of the beach area. He said it'll pull it up right by the roots, so it'll go a long way to get rid of that problem, I think, in the swim area. We are looking at a longer-term solution. Joe, we had that meeting up there at the lake, and we're looking at trying to see if we can get some funding to draw the lake down. And we believe that that'll go a long way. If we can drop the lake about 8 feet, let's say, every fall, the winter kill will kill off the weeds that are there, and that'll help not only us, but all the residents around the lake and all the other recreational activities on the lake, from boating and fishing, kayaking, crew team. It'll go a long way to help a lot with that. And again, Greg Bugby's been involved in that study. I know Jim's been doing a study on that.
Well, if I can comment on that, Rick, before we lose sight of it, we had a meeting October up at the lake somewhere with 2 of our state representatives, and one, Vincent Candelora, who represents that district, 4th district up there, and Senator Meyer, and a couple of residents and president of the Lake Association, and Deep was down there.
Yeah.
And it's a state lake, yet they're not providing any maintenance for funds. So I've been working with our state legislators and saying we need some help here. But in the meantime, we need to get those weeds out of there. And I told Rick to put an amount in the budget that was an amount that he determined that would be to remedy the situation. Going forward on that project, is our engineering department, headed by Jim Portley, has done some survey work, and what we're going to do is we're going to dredge out the beginning of the West River, which that's where the lake empties into, and it goes across some private land, some agricultural meadows there. We've been talking with the owners, and probably have to get some easements, obviously get some easements, so we can dredge it out, put larger culverts in there, so the lake will, and a dam, so we can control the flow of the water. And once we are able to lower the water, these weeds are not encouraged to grow. And that was all. So this is really a one-time expense on this. I just wanted to point that out. And we're meeting with Deep in a week or two regarding our design, and we'll go from there. Okay, but it's not in this budget. What's in the budget is the maintenance of it, which would be eradicating the weeds.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah, thank you. Also in the maintenance budget, we had $8,200 for repointing the Rollwood Farm Park chimney. We put that in there because we've been told that the Rollwood Farm is going to become a park, and it's going to come under our jurisdiction. And you know, there's the foundation here in the chimney. This is right across from Whitfield Museum. And we've had it looked at, and there's some issues about, you know, is the thing going to fall over, and some of the rocks are falling out. And so we got a, quote from a company to repoint that, so we put that in there. The other sizable increases, I guess I call it that, are senior meals. The current subsidy or allocation from the town budget for the meals for the seniors is $23,000. We're anticipating our deficit this year being approaching $38,000. So we're going to be about, I'm anticipating this year we might be $15,000 in the hole in that account. Terry and I spoke recently, we were talking with Larry Santamaria, we're doing some things to try to adjust that and try to reduce that shortfall there. So we're not going to be asking, well, we may be asking for more money, I don't know yet, but based on the first 6 months of the year, we're heading in that direction. And so some of the things we talked about in the Parks and Rec Commission, this is Jack. Jack is one of our commission members, by the way. Penders, yes. And so he's on the subcommittee.
Yeah, Rose behind you.
Rose here to say, Rose, I didn't see you back there. And as a subcommittee, we talked about a number of issues that I'm going to address right now with the seniors. But the first one is the meals. I have a handout I can give you. In fact, there's a packet of some other stuff here, too. I'll pass it out about some of the bus issues, too, that we're going to discuss. I think I have about 10 of
Do you
them.
want to keep going?
I think.
Just send it to Sheila, she'll pass it on, you can keep talking.
Okay. So, anyway, the bottom line with the senior meals is that we're the cost of food's rising, and so next year I figured out that our estimated expense is going to be about $145,000, and you'll see this in the sheet I'm sending around. Our estimated number of meals is 30,000. A big percentage of that is Meals on Wheels, probably about 75% is Meals on Wheels that we prepare at our community center. The volunteers bring it out to the folks. And so our projected revenue next year, we're looking at raising the fee by 25 cents, which is going to be about an 8%, roughly 8% increase on the meals. If we raise this by 25 cents between the Meals on Wheels and the senior meals, that's going to give us additional revenue. Plus, we have breakfast that we provide 5 days a week at the community center. That's available to anybody. Anybody can have breakfast. It's not subsidized by the town. The prices are, I think, are high. Well, they're higher than what the lunch meal prices are. The breakfast actually helps subsidize the lunches. Our projection next year is we're going to take in about $18,000 just for breakfast to help subsidize lunch. I'm pointing this out, I'm wanting to illustrate that things we're trying to do in-house to reduce that deficit. We're not asking for $50,000 from the town budget to help cover meals. So our projected revenue is going to be about $109,875. And you see the sheet I handed out. So our expenses 145, revenue the 110. The allocation or subsidy we need is about 35,000. I also want to point out that 3 years ago, we had $32,000 that was given to us for senior meals. It was dropped down the last 2 years to $23,000. And so 3 years ago, we had 32. Now we're asking 35, so it's a pretty small increase from what we were a few years ago. And the reality is, we're not making it. We're just not cutting it. And we don't think it's fair to turn around and ask the seniors to pay $5 or $6 a meal. I mean, that would be doubling the cost to them. And for some of these seniors that come 4 days a week, I mean, that's a big, hefty drain on their wallet. So So we're just asking to give us basically almost back what we had a few years ago with a slight increase, so 35,000 is what we projected we're gonna need there. Another senior issue is our bus drivers, and I know that a resident came and spoke to the Board of Selectmen, you know, asking for more hours, and she submitted a letter to the Parks and Rec Commission, and we, the subcommittee was addressing this, and we talked about it at the full commission meeting, that we're asking for a slight increase in hours for bus drivers. I think it's 3 more hours a week. We're at 57 hours right now. We're asking to go to 60. Terry looked back and did some research a few years ago, and I don't know if that's in this packet, Terry, but we were 67 hours like 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, 6 one down.
Again, we had more hours a few years back, and we got cut back, so we're asking for some of that back now. It's a minimal increase. I think it's about $1,700, and we're going to offset that also by raising fees for the trips that we do. When I say trips, I'm talking about motor coach trips. So these are using our buses. We go to the Iverton Theater, or we have a mystery lunch once a month, and Wednesday trips that we do with our bus. We've been charging $2 per ride for that. We're going to raise that to $4, because we double the cost of that. That'll make up the difference, really, in what we're asking for an increase for. So when we take that in, we will take that money that we collect, deposit into our part-time account to help offset the cost of the driver. So it's a really a zero impact on the budget. We're asking for it in the budget, but we're going to reimburse it. Along with that is the 4 or 5 additional hours we've asked for our office assistant. That was a full-time position up until, what was it, 2011, I think, Terry? 10 or 11. It was a full-time position. It was reduced to a part-time position, 19 hours a week. But I looked at some, I don't want to dazzle you with facts and figures here, but you can look at some of these charts that Terry put together. And if you look at the one that's got the blue graph on it, since we have lost that position, these are just number of passengers. From 2010 to 2000, to the first 4 months of 2000, or first 6 months of 2014, it's about a 63% increase in the number of people using our buses. And these are rides around town. I think Terry figured out that 50% of those, that increase of those riders, are just coming to the community center for our programs, lunch, or whatever. So it's in town. I think it was 35% is medical rides, and we have a boundary that the commission has established. We won't go past Westbrook to the east or New Haven to the west. Excuse me, but occasionally we do go to the VA hospital in West Haven, and we're not going to turn down veterans from going there. So the majority of the rides are people in town, you know, just going to a hairdresser appointment, or, you know, the community center, or shopping. We consider that the bus service is a basic service, and it's one thing we do provide for free. As I said, the trips, they do pay for those trips. Those will be self-supporting. When they come to the community center, if they're in a program, they pay for the full cost of the program. We're not subsidizing anything else. So the only free thing we're providing for seniors is the bus transportation. And as I said, the trips, which they sign up for, that they're going to pay for, and we're going to increase the cost of
Rick,
that.
I might add that the proposed increase for the medical transportation can be offset by the individual rider as a tax deduction under federal income taxes, transportation for medical purposes, maybe the state, I don't know. And it may well be covered by their private insurance. As an example, I have a private insurance policy which is supplementing my Medicare. And there's a provision there for coverage for rides under certain conditions. If I require home health care, under those conditions, the insurance would cover that. I'm not sure everyone has that provision, but that is one that exists, and they might take a look at that.
So what I'm pointing out with all this is, with this 63% increase in the number of requests for rides, that's a lot more phone calls coming in, scheduling drivers, scheduling people that get picked up, and we can't do it with 19 hours a week. Can't do it. And we are asking that position was full-time 3 years ago, and we've increased 63% since that's gone. And we've also increased programs, and this Shoreline Institute for Lifelong Learning SIL programs have skyrocketed over the last couple of years, and that's more people coming in, more registrations and everything, and so, but it really has a net zero impact on the budget, what we're asking for, because our current budget for that position is $15,393. Barbara, who has been in that position for a number of years, just retired last week, Friday. This is before we put the budget together, so we didn't have that information. She was 19 hours a week. By going to 24 hours a week, the new position starts at a lower rate, 1096 versus 15, I forgot the now, 15 something.
1559.
1559. And so our budget, current budget is 15,393. The new budget will be, with more hours, be 13,678. So there's a zero impact. It's actually a reduction by about $1,700 in the budget. So it has no budgetary impact, but it gives us the help we need. And so that we're strongly looking for help there.
Rick, in full disclosure, though, that person, I'm going to ask Mitch the question because I'm not sure. Bringing it up to 24 hours, that qualify for benefits then?
No, it qualifies them for the GEA, and also the only benefit that the 24-hour-a-week people receive is 5 holidays per year.
Okay, so there's no medical
No
cost?
medical, life, no, none of that.
Other than the FICA, and that's going to be a small amount.
Obviously, increase in the salary there, but as Rick has pointed out, it will be an overall decrease in the overall cost of that position.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you.
And I guess the last thing I'll just mention, Joe,
Rick, before you move on, we had talked briefly after the meeting that the letter was presented asking for greater service. Have you, is it possible to coordinate with neighboring towns to increase the service? I mean, I presume when you go to New Haven, for instance, for a medical service, you don't have a busload. I mean, you don't have a whole bunch of people going at the same time. Is there any way to coordinate so that if a Madison bus is going, that, I mean, I'm not trying to put specifics on it.
No, but that's an
can you coordinate?
That's an interesting question, though.
and we did talk about
To
that.
use your hypothetical of Madison, I think between the two towns, there's 85 square miles. And it's about 15% of New Haven County alone. So that's a lot of service to cover. And it's increased miles to our vehicles, increased wear and tear. And I'm not sure how many miles of roads we have in Guilford or Madison either. We might have a couple of hundred in Guilford. And we're talking for...
It's like 180 something.
Yeah, so that would be difficult. And the combined population is 50,000. So if we were to take a Guilford and Madison combination, that's 50,000 that both towns would have to serve. And presumably, we'd be part of that service to their 18,000 versus our 22,000. Yeah.
Well, as I say, Gary, we've started to try to limit the number of trips to New Haven to 1 day a week. So I think maybe now we have 1 person or 2 people, but we're hoping that we can get all the people that need to go to New Haven on that 1 day, which would increase the ridership, cut down on the number of
Yeah,
trips.
I mean, I'm not trying to pick on a particular
No, I
event
know.
like the
I
trips
know
to New
that.
Haven, but
No.
I happen to live near the Madison border, and the street that I live on is a fairly frequent route from Madison to Madison. On the revenue side, I keep saying we're going to put up a toll for Madison residents that want to travel down Nortontown. But I see I say that because I see the Madison
Right.
buses go by my house on a frequent basis. And sometimes they turn down and go to exit 59 or whatever. So, you know, if there's an overlap in service, you know, maybe it benefits both towns. You know, I'm not saying that the bus is supposed to go from the community center to the north part of Madison, but maybe there's some way if there's a depot in both towns. Think about it. Think about it. That's all I'm saying for this purpose.
We will.
service,
We
perhaps
will.
we can.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
If we could make it work, I think we will. Yeah.
And there are some things we do cooperatively with Madison, like the SIL program.
Mm-hmm.
Sterling Institute for Lifelong Learning is Madison, Guilford. Some of the programs are in Madison, some are at the community center. And I think we do with the, we do
Computer.
some, the computer program we have that's, they have computers, we don't, so we do a senior computer program in Madison with Guilford Madison. And some of the trips we do jointly. But yeah, I mean, there are things we do work together with them, and certainly we could look at that.
It's also important to know, though, that Madison does not currently assess fees or user fees for their transportation system, for their van system. However, you know, the town is the beneficiary of a considerable estate, which goes to fund their Meals on Wheels program. So that's a subsidy, not by the town of Madison, but by someone who passed away, Milton Marcus, you may know the name. So that their savings are their expenditures are offset by that grant of money. And about a year ago, the folks in Madison developed a 501 3C account called the Friends of Madison Seniors Organization. And that's a dedicated account, interest-bearing, and will only grow over time. And that'll be used to help fund the operations of their senior citizen center.
Great. Other than trips for programs, do we charge seniors for any transportation?
No.
Okay, so we do the same thing, Jeff.
Right.
We don't
Right.
charge either.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
There is just one other increase in the budget.
Although, I'm sorry to jump in again, although, going back to your point, some of this is reimbursable in certain circumstances by insurance and tax deductible.
Not to the town.
Oh, it's not to the...
Not to the
To
town.
the individual.
But to the individual.
Individual.
An individual.
But if the again, you got a bookkeeping issue, but if it's reimbursable to the individual, you know, maybe there's a way of saying you can pay $2 or $5 for the trip and put it in.
Right.
This is rather than the town budget pay, let an insurance, I won't put a name on it, let an insurance company
I
pay.
agree.
So I mean, it may be an informational thing that will allow us to get reimbursed.
We would certainly do that, Gary, certainly. And by the way, we have about 1,600 veterans in Guilford, and they certainly take advantage of those medical trips, too. When we say West Haven, people say, gee, that's the other side of New Haven, but that's the VA hospital.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not frequent. Those trips are not like every week. You know, I don't know how often we go there, but we do.
Twice a month.
We do go there, yeah, a couple times a month. So it's pretty minimal. But again, the commission, when we met with the subcommittee, we did put some parameters on how far we go. We're not going to go to New London or Groton or, you know, it's Westbrook and Westbrook because there's some medical services there, and New Haven. So that's our boundary, and I think Middletown to the north. So
Well, we're looking ahead, too, though, into the next year's
Yeah.
budget, where Middlesex Memorial Hospital is setting up a medical center in Westbrook.
Right.
It's not just an emergency care situation. And then also, there's going to be a major urology center, Route 1 near Lenny and Joe's. That's another, certainly a request for service.
And the medical rides have just skyrocketed. You know, up until about 2 or 3 years ago, there was a Red Cross in town that transported people for medical appointments, and they don't do it anymore. So that is a lot of what our increase has been for the medical needs. And again, how do you turn down somebody that needs to go to Yale for chemotherapy or something? You know, they have no way to get there. So Terry gets all those requests, and Barbara did, and again, because of the increase in the requests, it puts a greater burden on number of phone calls, number of people needing communication, calling back and forth, and that's why we asked for the additional hours for that position. But as I pointed out, it has a negative budget impact, actually reduced budget, really, because it's a new person, new wage. Can I just mention one other thing, is the fireworks.
I haven't stopped you.
Fireworks we put back into the budget. And Adrian Price, who was the chair of that, has stepped down, said he's not interested in doing it anymore. He told me he talked to a couple members of the Board of Selectmen who encouraged him to say, by saying that they would support.
The major events?
Yes,
Yeah.
10,000. It's the largest town event, you know, it was in our budget for a number of years, it was cut out for about 3 years, I think. And Adrian and Ed Bartlett and Ray Luden did a great job of doing the fundraising for it. It was really 3 guys trying to raise the money for it. And they've done it. They're just kind of like, we did our thing, we helped, we don't really want to do it anymore.
Isn't that a natural area of subsidy from one organization or another, one business or another that is centered in Guilford? Wouldn't the bank be interested in that?
Wow.
The bank is doing so much, especially this year. They're tapped out.
Yeah.
I mean,
They're tapped out.
Yeah.
particularly with the 375th. They're one of the diamond sponsors, which is a $6,000 level. If I can comment on the fireworks, I've been approached, you know, when you produce surpluses year after year, people start saying to you, you know, come on, it's only 10. Town can afford it. And I tend to agree. At this point, we can. Back then, we could.
It's not to say if somebody wanted to sponsor some aspect of
they
the
can.
fireworks, they certainly could, and I'm sure there would be that, but it doesn't have to be make or break for the event to go forward.
No.
Absolutely.
But it's certainly an opportunity for someone who feels that they want to
We wouldn't turn it down.
Yeah, if there's any law firm that wants to contribute.
You got it, Carl.
Get that credit card?
Carl, you're good. You've done this before.
Don't stop at the lawyer to get architectural. Some individual.
I'm seeing dollar bills when I look over here.
No, that is my question. Is there a possibility
Can I
that
give?
a new committee will come into play and sort of take their template for fundraising and run with it? That's an unknown, though, so you
an
got a
unknown.
budget for it.
I think we need to put it in. If someone comes forward and says, hey, we want to do some fundraising, then maybe we don't need the full 10,000. We can pull some of that back. Or it's, maybe this year is a little bigger celebration because it's the 375th. But I think everybody knows it's a great event. I think it's wonderful for the town. It's the largest town event. You know, I'm not counting the Guilford Fair. That's not a town event, but event sponsored by the town is the biggest thing that we do, and I'd hate to see it drop.
Okay, great. I got one question. In the capital side of the budget, which I have to admit, I wasn't here for the presentation, the ball field grooming machine that you want to replace at the 1992 vintage that you're replacing. Okay. I would make the suggestion to the board that that particular item of $24,000 come out of your reimbursable accounts, just like you did with the beach groomer.
Yeah, I guess we'd have to talk about that as a commission.
I'm not in opposition to what you just presented, but we need some leeway, okay? And that would help reduce this budget, your budget considerably on the capital side. So that's for us to discuss, but I'm going to tell you, to be honest about it, where I'm coming from on that. And how, being so old in 1992, what condition is that ball field river in?
It's 21 years old. I mean, we've used it, but it's like bubblegum huddled together. It's in pretty bad shape.
Okay. So, you know, I think it says justification to take the program account.
And what that machine is in case it's actually called a Sand Pro machine that they use on golf courses for like sand traps and stuff sometimes too. But it's a three-wheel vehicle that has has spikes in it, so you loosen up the clay. We use it every day on every ball field, and so it gets a lot of use. It loosens the clay up, then there's a drag mat that then drags the clay out. It smooths out the running surface of the baseball and Little League fields.
And let me just ask you one more question. The ball fields now, you charge a fee to leagues that are not part of your parking rec and part of the school system, right?
There are very few. Well, no, like Little League, and no, we don't.
Okay.
No. We charge them if we need to do some overtime and come in on a weekend, and we charge them for that, but not for the maintenance.
We don't charge for any use of any of the fields?
No, not unless it's a tournament or a lot of non-resident, like Soccer Fest, they have, a majority of non-resident teams in, they pay for the use of the fields. Youth football, when they had their football jamboree with like 40, 50 teams from out of state, they paid. But for the in-town regular Little League soccer, no, there's no fee.
Some parents are under the misconception that we do charge, and I told them we don't.
We don't.
Now, the organizations that you do charge, where does the money go for that? What account does it go?
Well, if it's on the turf at high school, which again, not too many that happen there, but if it happens there, it goes to a turf fund account. The fields are maintained. There's not a lot in there. Not many non-resident.
What about?
Yeah, it goes into our maintenance. We have to really maintain the fields. Charge the police for lining it. If it's a little tournament, moving the field, it goes back into that.
So it gets credited to the operating budget?
Yes. It's not much.
Rick, I have two questions for you. One goes back to capital. Looks like you're going to do an upgrade to the alarm system at the community center. And I was just wondering what's driving that. Is that broken or just
Age, it's 21 years old. There are times it doesn't work. You have to put an alarm code in to get in, and hieroglyphics come up. I mean, you can't read it. It's like gibberish. The alarm company, who is local, Shoreline Security, local alarm company, they've been recommended for about 4 or 5 years we should be replacing that because it's so old. But it's, in addition to the upgrade, we also are looking for some security improvements. We put in some in the budget some cameras for the preschool room, and I think it was 2 or 3 cameras in the building. This was, after the whole Newtown situation, we don't have a security system in the building, and so we thought we should be proactive now and do that. It's reactive, really, because we should have done it 3 years ago. But thankfully, we haven't had any issues. But just to help improve the security of the building, we have some monitors.
Okay. Second question was about the Glenwood Park farm, the chimney replacement. I was just curious, is there a possibility that could go in the capital budget instead of the operating budget? Maybe it's a question for
What's the minimum for capital?
It's a maintenance.
Yeah, it's more maintenance, yeah.
Okay.
So maintenance would be replacing the field stones that are missing from the front of the fireplace.
Yeah. Mr. Garrett.
Speaking of maintenance, and what you alluded to is the Humphrey Bogart effect.
Ken, there's only a couple of us who would. Me included.
But a couple of us that remember the maple trees from the 19th century. Since we're talking about budgeted items that will take effect in the next fiscal year, and you described this problem, which is pretty off-putting, I would think, to residents considering using Lake Quannapock. Is there any way of advancing this or using some funding in this year's budget to address this problem? Otherwise, we lose another season.
Great question, Ken. And actually, I thought that we would have to look at our budget like in April, see how we're doing. If we got 20,000 available, I think, yes, we should try to do something this year, for sure. We're believing that if we do it once, it's not an annual thing. It might be every 5 years, unless we can do the drawdown to the lake. I think that's going to help. But I think we need to put it in as a placeholder just in case that we don't have that. We can't do it. We may have to do it July 1st. If we had to shut the lake, the beach down for a day or two, we may have to do it. But to your point, yeah, I think for this season, we really have to try to do something. Whether it ends up being in May, before we open Memorial Day, out of this year's budget, if we don't have funds for it, then July 1st. Maybe we get everything set up, purchase orders ready to go out to bid, whatever we have to do, and then, assuming the money's available, then we do it July 1st. But I agree. Because this will have an impact on our revenue too. If people don't want to go swimming there, we're not going to get the beach pass money. So it really has a ripple effect on impacting other areas of the budget, the revenue side too.
Okay. Any further questions, comments? Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
No, it's not.
Lisa next?
Do you want to pause again?
No, Lisa here.
That'd be a good idea.
Okay, the next department is police and the municipal animal control. You ready, Chief?
Okay.
But if he's gonna reimburse,
Yeah, I mean, there's other sources too. We could go to that.
so we can fight.
It's a tough budget year, you know?
One of our selectmen holding them up, so that's okay.
Especially.
Blocking the way.
It's a
Curious choice of words when you find police.
No pun intended there, okay?
I think transport is very good. Finding a way to
Yeah,
get it
They're
done.
very recyclable.
The reason it's in the middle of
Oh, yeah. We get nice stuff in the tune of like $20.
Did
you see you guys? Didn't I just see you guys?
That's why I think while we're on camera, at some point, we gotta see that situation.
Okay.
Don't you agree?
Good point, yeah.
Because people are gonna be surprised that we don't.
Thank you. That was part of it. Great.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, sir.
Welcome. We'll let you present, if you would allow us to interrupt you with questions. If not, that's fine. And we can ask questions at the end of your presentation. It's up to you.
Questions are welcome.
Okay.
Good
I want to
afternoon.
ask questions to people with weapons on their.
They took my bullets away when they came in. So
Okay.
it's a budgetary issue. We let them exchange them. The officers at briefing, they exchange them.
We let him have one, he keeps in his pocket.
But hello, what I want to do is start off with the explain the budgets. I know we have some new people. Just go over how we start out preparing our budget. The first thing we do is we get together with staff and we take a look at what we did last year, the staff that we have. We call it a staff inspection report. So our two lieutenants will form a report to us on every piece of operation we have in the department, be it the motorcycle, the bikes, how did the bicycles work last year? Do we need to do that? And what changes do we have to do within the department through the next budget year? So we have done that report, and they give us that analysis. We take that information. Then from that, we also do a workload analysis. So what we do is we take the complaints are all on the computer and all the officers' activities are on the computer. So after we take a look at our staffing and what we did last year and what improvements we could do with next year, we then take a look at the manpower and take a look at, the percent of availability, the percent of the officers tied up. We want to make sure we have the proper amount of officers, number one, to handle the activity we have in the town. Then we also break that down by shifts, and we break it down by the sectors of town. So we kind of make sure that, number one, the personnel we're using is enough, or if it's too many, then we're, as you've seen before, we have cut people. If we take a look at it, that the crime is dropping and there's other issues going on. So we do that right from the beginning, just taking a look at the budget, even before we start preparing numbers. I also check with the superintendents of schools. As you know, we're quite heavily involved with the school system to see how that worked. You see other towns, asking for full-time SROs, and with our communication with the superintendent, we have a very good working relationship. The first thing I do at the end of school year, how did it work? Do we have to do anything else for next year? Or are we happy with the way we've been going? And talking to Dr. Freeman, he's more than pleased of how we're doing the school. And so we're going to leave that as it is. I don't really want to get into what we're doing. I could talk to you in private on that because it's a security issue, but I could certainly talk to you off camera if you want, of how we're actually doing the officers and how we're visiting the schools. So from that, we set some goals and we start preparing our budget. Last year, with communicating with Sheila, we've always presented two budgets too. We presented the police department budget, and then we presented the municipal animal control officer budget. This year, I joined them together to make it easier on us and on finance, because I the gas for the canine van. They pump it out of the same tank. We never back charge them. It's just the gas gets pulled out of our tank. So supplies for the office, they come in and take our supplies. It just didn't make any sense to have two separate accounts going, so I combined them. So you'll see in my budget, where I did combine those, I gave you a separate couple lines down below, like in civilian salary, that you'll see the MACOs are there together. In supplies and in service contracts, I separated those out so you can see those costs, and I basically brought the cost over from the last year's MACO budget and massaged it in together with the police budget. So as I go through it, I'll point out where those are. Just so you know, we're talking the police department. We have 37 sworn officers. That includes the deputy chief and myself. There are 3 civilian dispatchers. There are 3 civilian staff, and there are 2 municipal animal control officers, which makes up the entire department. We also have a contracted janitorial staff, so they take care of the cleaning of the building. So starting with the police salary, we're still in negotiations with the contract, so these salaries are 2 years old. We're into this will be the third budget year without an increase, because the contract is still under negotiations. So what you see, the difference that you do see in the police side of the contract, of the budget, is the grade increases. An officer starts out at probationary wage, a year later they go to C, to B, to A. So that's why you might see that the number a little different than what you saw last year. You can see at the bottom of the page of the new officers and when we anticipate their grade changes. So when you look at a contract, you're not going to see, like an officer Anania, there's not a $60,000 salary in the contract. It's combining the B's and the C's together, the amount of weeks, to come up with what that number would be. And also at the bottom, is an extra day's pay. What that is there's not 52 full weeks in a budget year. So what I do is I figure out what that extra day is at the end of the year, figure out who's going to be working that day. That's where I come up with that $7,000 figure. There's never full 52 weeks. Everybody thinks it was, there's not. 52 weeks in one day normally is what happens. So you end up with $7,000 that you're not budgeting for. So we do that every year because it is a significant number. Like I said, there's no changes on personnel. We had 37 last year. We're just funding the 37 for this year. At this point, we are at full staff, except I'm down 2. One is still under an injury that's been going on. We're looking to replace. One officer just resigned, so we're in the testing process to bring us back to 37 actually working people. The next account is the civilian salary account. Again, I told you who those were. If you see at the bottom of the page, the 2 municipal animal control officers, their salary was just brought over from last year's MACO budget into the civilian salary side. They are members of GEA, so they also do not show a salary increase because that contract is up for negotiation, and I believe finances has money set aside for reserve for personnel for those salaries.
Yeah, if I can just jump in for a second. When we were off camera yesterday, one of the departments was human resources, and Rich has got to leave for another. I will say that all of the departments where you see very little increases in the salary, it's only because of steps or grade increases, but where we have not had any major increases in department budgets on salary lines, like you mentioned, that's because we provided for anticipated increases, and we put those into another department. And for various reasons, we don't, detail those. Okay. So although departments show no increases, we
75th, for example, they're not funded anywhere, it comes out of the overtime account. Replacement account is an officer scheduled to work today, and because of the shift staffing, they have to be replaced, they're on a holiday or something like that. That's where the replacement account, that would get budgeted. Not everybody taking a day off has to get replaced. It's really based on how many officers are working that particular shift. So it's not like every holiday has to be replaced. It's done as on an basis. Okay.
Looking at the overtime, police department overtime, what would account for your requesting a 15.5% increase in overtime?
As you know, if you look at the page, we use a 3-year average. We take the last 3 fiscal years, and we take the actual amount of money that's been budgeted for police salary, and what we actually spent within those 3 years to kind of give us an average, Ken, so we don't get, spikes. It kind of evens everything out, so we can look at it over a 3-year period. And as you know, the last 2 years, we had bad years. We had the hurricanes, we had snowstorms. We were able to maintain a reasonable budget, but those did go over. In those last years, lucky we had money in the police salary, which kind of made up for those. So it's just using that formula that's worked for us those times. And you're going to see the same thing happen in replacement. It's just over that 3 years, it kind of gives us a good basis to budget. And the question always comes up, well, can we do it less? Every time we do that, we're under budget because the formula just works for us. So that's how we base it.
Can I just pick up on Mr. Garman's question? You use actual numbers for the last 3 years.
Correct.
Okay, those include storm-related.
Correct.
Okay, which FEMA has reimbursed us for.
It's down the line, but I never see it in my budget.
So there is some sort of credit that could be applied to this, is what I'm saying.
I think the numbers that I used here, that number for the storms was subtracted out, and we had a separate line item for it on the bottom.
That's my question.
Right. So the storms, those storms that we had, that we got FEMA reimbursement, but as you know, that's only a short little bit of that money. It's not the entire storm.
If you used the budgeted actual numbers from the budget reports, then you're correct.
Correct.
If you use the gross numbers, then it's higher. Okay.
Use the actual budget.
Okay. Good.
And as you know, like prior to the storm and after the storm, a lot of that stuff wasn't chargeable to FEMA because it wasn't storm related, but we certainly put extra people on to cover stuff, but it might not be, as FEMA classifies it as storm related.
Okay.
Overtime.
And you did not use any estimate numbers for the 2015 year?
Estimate numbers?
No, you just used actuals for the last 3 years.
Actuals for the last 3 years, right.
My concern is that we are not doubling up with what we're providing for in reserve for personnel, and then you tacked on an additional amount.
That has no salary increases at all.
Okay.
That's just using the actual budgeted number of police services, the actual number of what was spent out in that fiscal year for overtime.
Okay.
I have just a follow-up question about the overtime. I saw on your page how you calculated it, and it seemed to make some sense. But I was also wondering, for 2013-14, are we on track for what we budgeted for, or are we already running over?
13-14, right now, I just did an analysis for the commission meeting last night. The first part of the year was bad. We had some activities, and I was looking at a negative at the end of the year. But it's kind of too early. We're only 24 weeks, 25 weeks into the budget year. Projecting out, because we've had a couple of good weeks that I'm looking at, we're going to be in good shape for the end of the year.
Okay.
Replacement, on the other hand, also was looking bad because we were short 8 bodies at one point. So there was a lot of replacements, but since we've gotten people out of the academy, we got people back from injuries or sicknesses, that is, we were having $8,000 or $9,000 weeks in replacement, where it's only budgeted for like $3,500, $3,700 a week. We're now back down to the budgeted number, and last week was good. It was only like a $900 week in replacement, which is was unbelievable that we didn't have many people booking off. The holidays are over, less people were asking for time off, less vacation time. But we'll see that spike start to go back up again in April, May, and June, when all the officers are trying to get their time off with the kids on vacation and that sort of thing, so.
Okay.
But looking at this point, it looks like we should be in good shape. Plus, we just got 3 people out of the academy. They're in field training right now. They'll hit the road on their own in mid-March, which then would be assigned to a shift, which then would hopefully not require as many replacements with those 3 bodies added on.
Okay.
But when you were high on replacements, you were low on the actual salary line.
Right, but this time of the year, this year, normally that's true, but what happened this year is the 3 were at the academy. So we were paying.
You paid them anyway.
Right, there wasn't any extra money in the police salary because they were getting paid, but we were still incurring the replacement costs because they were at the academy.
Okay.
Sometimes that works out for us if we're in the process to hire, like right now, we're 1 body short, we're in the process to hire, so we're not paying that $1,100, $1,200 a week salary right now for the officer left. So the salary line item should be, right now I think should be at 47%, 49%, we're at 47, so there's a 2% positive right now in the police salary line item. And that's why you see sometimes there's 200,000 left over, I think, one year, because we're that many bodies short, we're not paying police salary, but we were over in the replacement account because we're not paying their salary, we still have to pay replacement to replace them on the shift.
Okay, I see the relationship, how they counter each other.
Correct.
Could you describe this training salary? Is this a salary for members of the police department? In all of these many categories that run from active shooter to taser, maybe 12.5 categories that you have here. Is this salary that it supplements the police department, or is this salary to some external people?
These are all town employees. We are mandated by the state of Connecticut to do so much training in a 3-year period to get recertified. These are training classes that when we can, we schedule the officers on duty to go to. Sometimes we can't because we have the 3 shifts running. So those are paying time and a half for the officers to attend training classes. Like typically you'll have a legal law update class that we bring an outside vendor in for. So we try to get the entire department done within 2 days. So we'll schedule that on a day shift, so the officers that are on schedule to work midnights and the evening shift, we have to pay them time and a half to attend the training. So that's what you see. And there's a further breakdown that maybe you don't have, that I have, that goes through where the training officer has a matrix that they put in, and they try to go through each officer on what shift. He knows what training is going to be taking place, like the legal training, and he knows what shift that they're going to be on. So he kind of tries to figure out, okay, how many am I going to have to replace on this particular training because it's being done on days and I got to replace the evening, the midnight shift. So that's how we come up with those numbers, is kind of moving people around and trying to figure out who's going to be a time and a half and who's not. But on the training salary, those are the typical trainings that we are going to do next year. Active shooter, we go through events at the range. We just did it last week. Crisis team training is, the SWAT teams and those sort of things. Defensive tactics, handcuffing, and using the taser, incorporating all kind of training classes like that. And they're all mandated by the state of Connecticut to keep the officers certified. And it also protects us liability-wise for lawsuits, that the officers are trained properly and they know what to do. We just had an event last week that was very commendable on the officer. He was approached by a 6'3" guy, 200 and some odd pounds, by himself. Because of the proper training and the equipment that you allow us to purchase, the officer was able to handle the situation himself with a taser, tase him, get him down, handcuff him. Nobody's hurt. He goes to the hospital, and we're good. Without that, years ago, it would have been nightsticks. It could have been possible shooting. So in the training helps a lot, because that's what we train them to do within those training classes, to go over that and how to do that and how to present themselves and how to deal with those situations. So the taser, you hear a lot of negative things about the taser, and we've always been very fortunate since Carl's time and before that, that we've always had a good amount of training time. So we can get the officers trained. So we don't get those lawsuits that you see other departments doing because they're just not training properly. And in this situation, it just worked out well for us that it was tased and handled and done. The replacement account, we kind of do that as the same as we do the overtime account. It's on that 3-year basis. Again, it is higher this year because of we had a couple bad years the last 2 years. And normally when I do the budget, I'll take a look at it and see if there's any anomalies. I can say, okay, maybe I can cut it this year because, okay, last year was a bad year, but maybe I can get away with it and not do as much replacement as the formula's calling for. Well, this year I'm already anticipating there's a bunch of retirements that are going to be coming up, which is going to require, it takes us about a year from the time we start taking an application until we can actually put somebody out on the street. So I already know, anticipating coming ahead, that it's probably in the year, I guess you're calling it year 16, is that what we're calling it?
This is 15.
Yeah, 15. And we're already anticipating the 15 budget year, there's going to be people leaving and there's going to be training required, so there's going to be replacement that's going to be necessary. So if we're looking for a place to cut, these are probably not places to cut this year, anticipating the department is aging and there's a lot of people that are up for retirement. They haven't put them in yet, but we can anticipate they're coming. So it's not a good year to be thinking this is a place to cut.
Chief, could I just, you're anticipating retirements in the 2014-15 year, which we call this the 15 we're dealing with at the moment.
I'm anticipating in this, next year we're looking pretty good. It's the year after. This
16.
The 16.
Okay.
It's the budget we're talking now that I'm anticipating.
Okay, then no need to ask my next question.
Yeah. Let's see, sick time, sick leave exchange. The officers, if by contract, they can bank 140 days. Anything more than 140 days, they can sell back to the town 5 for 1. It does actually save us money because the employee has less tendency to take sick time because they know they can cash it in. So it does actually save us money in the long end, which we've been doing for quite a few number of years. The contract has changed. The newer personnel don't get this, so in years coming, this will probably be done away with in the near future. Outside services donated. These are events that, you know, it happen throughout the town during the year, like during the Christmas tree lighting. We have to put officers down there, but there's nobody to bill for it. So I think during Sam Bartlett's year, we came up with, okay, at least let's make a line item. So on these events that come up, the Little League parade, when they open up that we have to put an officer out there. Graduation, Frosty 5, the fireworks for Rick. You don't see us putting in a budget and charging Rick for the officers. It just comes out of the police department budget. So those are the events that we anticipate coming up for next year.
I have a question about that, Chief.
Yeah.
I've always given you some accolades for that. It's always nice to see the police presence at the events, and my kids and family appreciate it. I was wondering, why do you include it in the budget? Does it have an impact on the budget?
It does, because you see that amount of overtime that's expended. And we don't, sometimes we can't use the on-duty personnel because there's not enough, so we have to supplement and bring them in on time and a half to work these events. The officers you probably see there are not the on-duty officers. These are officers that brought in at time and a half. Because the shift doesn't have enough personnel on it to draw from it to assign it down on these events.
Got it.
So the primary officer down there is probably being paid time and a half. There are some other officers that we can pull off the street that does help out the officer in these special events. So these are getting paid time. Educated payment is just contractual based on the college degrees and type of degree. Just list every officer that's going to receive those monies. Utilities, as you see at the bottom of the page, I brought the utilities over from the MACO budget from last year to be incorporated with the utility budget from the police department from the year previous. Gasoline, again, that's based on Amount of gallons that we average out for the last, we 2-year average, Jill, or 3-year average?
At least, not more.
On the amount of gallons. Normally, we were budgeted at 30,000 gallons a
Consistent.
year, but we've since been trying to average that out. And the average has been pretty good. Like last year, you'll see when we did the capital, because we had less officers, we used less gas, less miles around the car, is the reason you see us only asking for 2 cars in the capital budget. So all those officers being short has an effect on a lot of other things within inside the budget that we take care of, and we make sure that we're not over budgeting.
What are you finding about gas usage between the Explorers and the Crown Vics?
We see it going down. It was a significant drop. I forget what the number was.
Yeah, we did an initial 6-month study following that, comparing the few Explorers that we had with the Crown Vics, and it was about a 40% efficiency increase. So it was a lot of things. It's about the Crown Vics get somewhere 8 and 9 miles to the gallon, and the other ones were coming in with 13, somewhere around there. Don't quote me on it, but it was close. That was a significant savings.
Significant.
Yeah.
So in this year's budget, we anticipate replacing current budget today. We got 3 on order, and then in this budget here, we're looking for 2. So, so we have, by the time this budget gets done, we'll have 3 left to transfer out. So we'll almost have the whole fleet changed over to the Explorers.
Are there any downsides to the vehicles? I mean, I think they look great. I think I've talked to a couple of the officers. They really like them.
They like them in a snowstorm.
Any downsides?
They're good in the snowstorms. They like them. They certainly handle better than the Crown Vics did, because the Crown Vics had the rear-wheel drive, and they were like driving a sled in the snow. And these handle a lot better because they are all-wheel drive. They like it because they are higher, so there's, being in and out of the vehicle. I mean, you say, okay, what's the big deal? But after, you're crawling in and out of the vehicle all the time, the Explorers sit up higher, so it's kind of like an easy transition. If you look at the things that cause injuries, getting all that kind of movement, it is better, it's kind of higher, so you kind of shift in and out of the vehicle. And they're a little bigger inside, there's more room inside to carry all the equipment, so I haven't heard any complaints on them yet.
Good.
Quick question. What year do you anticipate replacing the Explorers, the first Explorer? In 16 or?
Probably, see that we got 3 replacing this year, 2 the budget we're talking, and then there'll be 3 left. So we're talking the 16 budget year. We'll have all the LTDs replaced.
Okay, so the question is year 17, you're going to start replacing the Explorers that you have on the road.
Or 16?
Correct.
Okay,
Right.
I think that.
17
Yeah,
or
the best on
16?
the mile, yeah.
Okay.
17. Okay.
Okay.
Not this budget, not the next budget.
Okay.
Budget after.
Right.
All right.
Right.
And they won't be quite as expensive because some of the equipment will be transferable as opposed to this time
Correct.
they were now.
Correct. Right now, we're have to outfit all the cars. We're able to save the light bar because they can put different holders on the light bar, but everything inside the vehicle has to be replaced. And so that would be, in the 3 years from now, all the cars we outfitted, as long as Ford doesn't then decide to change the vehicles. But there are some movement within that. You can alter some of the equipment to make it fit.
Well, we're speaking of vehicles, probably a fairly small item, but the motorcycle. Are we using enough? Is it a necessity? Is there any value in it?
That's again one of those things we take a look at in that report I told you about, Charlie, to begin with, when the tenant takes a look at it. The reason we didn't get it out much this year, because we were so short of staff, we didn't have staff to put on it. We were just able to just maintain the normal patrols and not add the bikes and the bicycles and the motorcycle. Hopefully this year, with being at full staff, I hope to get the bicycles out at more of these events on the green, more, if we can
Not
have
the bicycles, the motorcycle.
and the motorcycle. The motorcycle and the bicycles. We use the motorcycle for traffic, on people that complain about radar. There's a bunch of areas in town that really it's hard for a car to get there and pull a car over safely.
So there is a use. It
There
just
is a
seemed
use,
like it was more almost grade vehicles.
If we're full staff, we do use it, but it says that's the last resort to put somebody else on. Because with that, if you put them on a normal patrol, then what do you do with the prisoner? Then you gotta call the other car in to transport the prisoner.
Well, that's the point. In a city or something, it makes some sense for, you know, getting through traffic and everything. I just wondered what the value was.
There is a value to some of the initiatives that we're doing with, say, if we're trying to do something on Route 1 with cell phone use. We like to get the motorcycle to pull the cars over. It's easier for the motorcycle to motivate around Route 1 and make those motor vehicles stop.
I don't see it listed to be replace rating, so it's
No, it's not.
big
So far,
subject today.
If you ask the motorcycle guy, he wants to replace it, but like you're looking at him saying that's not a priority to replace it, I guess. Right now, it's not costing us anything.
Hartford's shutting down the motor patrol, maybe we can get a horse.
Yeah, that's what he's a horse.
Get all those trail issues.
You know, I think it's time to consider moving the boundary of eastern Guilford.
Just so you know, the vehicles, I mean, we do have 10 marked patrol vehicles within the fleet. There's 3 cars that are assigned to the Detective Bureau. There's 2 cars that are assigned to the Deputy Chief and myself. There's a vehicle that we use for training, transporting back and forth. The Mako vehicles within this budget. Like you said, we do have the motorcycle. We have the pickup truck, the new command post that you approved us last year. And then there's one vehicle that we call a spare vehicle. Like this year, we're replacing the supervisor's motor vehicle. It's got 110,000 miles on it. So typically, we save that and we just run it to the ground. We use that for road jobs and that sort of thing. The last 2 that we had, we finally had 160,000 miles on them. Once Public Works says they're done, everything starts breaking, the transmissions are going. So we haven't had a vehicle like that we could use within this last fiscal year. So the supervisor's vehicle we currently have, when we replace it, we'll put into that slot that, you know, we can use it during storms and that sort of thing. So that's all the vehicles that we have assigned to us. Electronics is just repairing radios and tasers and that sort of stuff. Building maintenance, again, there is a line item we brought over from the Mako showing their expenditures from their budget last year. And then our budget. Nothing huge in there. We're still looking, as you talk about in capital, with the HAV, there is expenditures there, but we'll cover that under capital. Service contracts, I mean, this budget, this line always drives me crazy with the computer systems and software, with all the computer systems, making sure the software is correct and we're getting our money's worth. So I have the IT officer every year go through these software to see if we still need them and is it doing what we're getting our money for. So every year we go through this whole line on to make sure that we're getting our money's worth on that stuff.
Excuse me, is there anything new on that list? If you don't know offhand, it's okay.
I don't think there's anything new on there. I think it was just basically the same stuff that we've had years past.
What's a sonic wall?
It's a firewall. It's a software within the I-series computer, which stops bad people from getting into the system. If the IT guy was here, he could probably explain it to you, but then he probably bored you to death with exactly what he means.
Yeah, it's just, okay.
Yeah.
We wouldn't understand it anyway.
We wouldn't understand it anyway. That's why we trust them a lot of that. Clothing lines, again, by contract to keep the uniforms maintained. Copy machine leases, we lease the copy machines, the expenditure for those. Police and medical, it's just people get injured, pre-physicals for the officers to get hired, psychologicals, it's what ends up paying that account. Office supplies, again, I did bring over what was budgeted in Mako budget into ours for the $350 increase. Operational supplies, you see I did bring, I think the animal food was about the only thing I brought over from the Mako budget. For the animal food, there's another $400 expenditure.
Veterinary fees.
And vet fees, I brought those over from the Mako budget. Data processing, again, to maintain the equipment that we have going right now, to pay for that. Special investigations, we're doing drug investigations. The buy money is used to buy drugs from a suspect. And training development, the difference between training salaries and training development Training development pays for the ammunition that we need to conduct those training classes. The outside people that we bring in to teach those courses, that's incorporated in this budget. Anything that has to do with the training and the equipment that's needed is charged in this account.
Buy money, once it's used, it's gone, I mean.
Yeah, it's gone, yeah.
After a case is resolved, isn't there sometimes that things are available from?
Sometimes we use that money to pay the person to give us the information. Sometimes they don't like to do it for free.
No,
So that money is lost.
but isn't there a program where?
About asset forfeiture?
Yeah, I mean, it's.
Right, we still get.
But nowhere near these, and it's not is that a line item anywhere?
No.
And it's not a big number?
No, we haven't got any money from that in years. Again, usually it's when we're doing the bigger drug cases, we can then attach the assets, but the courts are getting less and less likely to give you that money. Federal government's grabbing it, taking it, state's taking it, and we get less of it.
But there's something wrong with that system, you would think when you arrest the guy, you give him some money, you take the money back right there.
The court needs the money.
Fake money or something?
The court needs the money, and yeah, it's not.
That becomes evidence?
That becomes evidence, yeah.
It goes into the big pool, right?
Yeah, it goes with big pool of the state of Connecticut.
Because
with that, we have to, we have to document to the court. We make a copy of the serial number of the bills, so when we do arrest a guy, we can prove that those
You
are
got
our
the
bills.
serial numbers of the bills, and I want those 6 bills back.
It doesn't, it usually takes 2 or 3 years for that to clear up, but that's not a significant.
The system, I'm sorry, okay.
Training development, motor vehicle maintenance, again, motor vehicles are repaired by Public Works. So the only thing you see us charging for are the actual pieces of filters, the oil. Parts, we don't pay salary. The salary comes out of Public Works side of the budget.
Tom, back a page. I've got to ask you, what's a red man suit?
Red man suit, when we're doing the nightstick training and self-defense training, it's really a rubberized suit, so the officers are actually fighting with this person. They're actually striking with a stick, so it keeps the officers getting hit from getting injured.
Okay.
It looks like, what's the guy who used to sell tires, that big old... Yeah, Michelin, yeah, that's what he looks like. The only thing is red.
Did you see Jamie on TV the other morning, with the dog training?
It's kind of like a suit like that, yeah. It's a big rubberized suit like that.
That guy hated it.
I got a question, and this is just overall on the budget. You had to absorb the Mako budget. Is there some kind of credit somewhere else then for the Mako budget, or this is just a line item consolidation? Or?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
There's some revenue.
You don't see a department sheet for that.
Okay.
That's what it is, okay.
So we got the motor vehicles, they're maintained by Public Works. The capital budget, you see that I'm already anticipating replacing 2 cars within this budget year. Again, because the mile is worked out, being short 8 bodies the year before, we're only anticipating replacing 2 vehicles.
capital, I forgot here. You already presented.
It's in a separate,
So
It's in
Okay,
here.
they don't have the cars?
no. Well, they have the book or it's on a separate page.
Okay.
Tom, the video system for $85,000.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, as you know, the building was built, I think we moved into the building in 1997. So the technology that we're still using is kind of based on that 1997 technology. We've replaced the cameras here, there, because they've broken, but all the infrastructure stuff is still the 1997 technology. So what we're trying to do is upgrade that technology, because now that technology just can't be replaced anymore. So we're trying to replace the entire video system within inside the building. So every cell block is videotaped. There's video cameras inside the Sally port, so when a prisoner is brought in, that's all videotaped. Inside the booking area, there's several cameras, that's all videotaped. And then there's cameras throughout the outside of the building for security of the building. So what we're trying to do is upgrade that entire system. There are some other good enhancements that come out of that system that we could possibly tie in video cameras in the schools and get live feeds from the schools. which is working with the Board of Ed, that, we have to set up protocols, but this newer system will give us the capability of doing other enhancements with that, not only just the police building itself.
You mentioned the schools, these 85,000 is just to have the
That's just
hardware in
ours.
place. It doesn't
Has
cover any of the
nothing
school
to do
stuff.
with, right.
Okay.
Nothing, we wouldn't have to add anything to the school, so I think you asked me to take a look at the grant to see if we can't get a
Right.
grant through through the school systems. We can't, because we're not doing anything to the schools, we're just enhancing our place so we can connect to the schools.
If you were to add the school onto this, could we get a grant for the whole thing?
Not that I'm aware of for the school side. Police, there aren't any law enforcement grants for this, and I don't believe the school grant would be applicable to this, because it's not improving the security of the school itself.
Okay.
And even that would be a small portion of that, Joe, that what we hope to do is be able to live feed the cameras, so we could, if there's an incident, there would be protocol set up to flip those particular cameras on, so we would see where that activity is.
Okay. Anything further?
I would only make one comment, which I think I made last year, is that police and most of our departments tend to request everything they need, but they don't necessarily spend everything that's in the budget. And I know the police department has returned to the general fund for, since I've been on the board, something from their budget. So unlike some organizations which spend every dollar where they're allocated, the police department and most of our departments, are responsible with their spend. They request it, but if they really don't need it, they don't spend it. So, congratulations to everybody. I just thought that should be noted, is that as the town runs a surplus, the departments run a surplus, the town runs a surplus, and we don't spend everything that's
We wouldn't
noted
we
here.
wouldn't have the surpluses if the departments weren't run.
Right.
Okay, that's what it was. Okay.
As your building moves on to age 20, moving close to being a 20-year-old building, do you anticipate any major capital changes or improvements?
Well, right now, we are looking at the HVAC system. As you know, there's money being appropriated for that. The other thing we're looking at, the roof was a 30-year roof when it was done. I think good caveats go to the building committee. When they built the building, the forethought was, 20, 30 years out, the size of the building. And I don't anticipate, based on the current economy, that we're going to have more officers than the building's going to fit, that can fit at this point within the next 10 years. We did anticipate, when we built the locker rooms, to have more lockers than we needed at that point, and the males and the females. I do see a tendency maybe that we don't have enough on the female side, because we had 50 lockers and there's only 10 in the females at this point. So down the road, depending, because we hire the best candidate, and if they're ladies that we don't really care, we'd have to find some other space for if we had more than 10 ladies in the locker room. That's the only thing I can see that could affect the building, Ken. You might have to replace a roof here and there. I know there's been some thought of selling old public works at some point to somebody. At that point, we would need to have some kind of a storage space for the equipment that we currently keep in the old public works. We keep the traffic cones and that sort of stuff that you see us bring out. We didn't anticipate building anything when we built the new building, because we had old public works. So that's what the couple bays in the end we use for cones and barricades and that sort of thing. Those are the only things I could see that would affect the budget: the roof, HVAC system, and some kind of a storage building.
It was a great building committee, Ken.
I think you were on it, sir, weren't you?
Anything further for the police department? Gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Take a 5-minute break. We got engineering, public works, engineering, and then fire. Consider Okay, we're back, and the department before us now is Engineering and Public Works. Morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Okay. Jim, you gonna lead us off?
No,
or-
Dean's gonna do the whole thing by himself.
Yeah, I'll have it all covered, so.
Okay.
Thanks for having us here this morning. I want to wish you a happy belated New Year to everyone here. I chair the Public Works Commission. My name is Dean Mitchell, and I'm here today with Jim Portley, Director of Public Works and Engineering, and Tom Fillion, Superintendent of Highways, and as well Gene Bishop, who sits on the Public Works Commission with me. So we've reviewed the budget for this year and took a conservative look at it. But I also want to take a step back and look at the prior year and how we performed, because let's gauge us on, you know, some of the things that happened in 2013 and say, hey, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? And there's been so many positives on the changes in the department and merging both Public Works and engineering from a strategic standpoint, but also from a budgetary standpoint. I want to also say thanks to the entire team here for all the efforts made, not just this past year, but the years before, in helping us with the equipment that we've so long needed that are now showing the effects in the town and our responsiveness to major storms. I want to remind everyone this is a year-round department. Everybody looks at us for those, you know, just the winter storms, and that's not the case. You know, we had Nemo last year that was over 2 feet of snow, and I will say that as an example of just that, the Public Works Department performed extremely well. As you've traveled around the state of Connecticut, and I don't know if you were around during that storm or could leave your homes, but you could see other towns that really did not deserve the rating that we did. Our towns were open quickly. Our towns were, we responded to all departments, fire, police, emergency vehicles. I don't think we missed a beat. And with a storm like that, it's an excellent example of the commitment that we made to equipment as well as the department. So I thank you for taking that years ago and putting the initiative of getting new equipment for us, because it's really paying off now. As we see the department evolve, some of the key areas that we've spoken with both the commission as well as with Jim and Tom is that we continue to get our new equipment in, but also to support the maintenance of the town roads. The infrastructure of the roads, like over at about 175 miles of roadways, and it's not all one roadway that we take care of, type. We support the town as well in trimming of trees. That helps the town as well, and especially with some of the storms, we've curtailed some of the potential hazards that are there. It's a year-round department. We support Public Works. Public Works supports every department that's out there. And as we evolve into the 375th anniversary, we're there as well, too, to support all the needs of the 375th. We have taken a good conservative look at this budget and taken a approach of our key area is the maintenance of our roads, both short-term and long-term. Looked at line items that would be approached in cutting back and also supporting. If you look at it, overall, our budget line items are very conservative, and it's about a 1.88 versus prior. Those are on the line items, just on the operating part of our budget. Sorry. Our increases overall are 5.9%, and we can go over the specifics. Jim can provide those to you in a little while. But as we look at long-term again, we're going to be taking a look at the infrastructure of the town in a study that will be presenting to the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance on the situation of our roads, and we can address that at a later date, but it really shows that we need to invest back into the roads again. You'll see areas that we've just been chip sealing, fixing potholes, but there's some long-term issues that we have to address as we look at our infrastructure. We also are involved in capital projects, and Jim will go over those. There's some very aggressive projects that are on the table, the support of our Public Works Department. So just want to go over budget specifics. If anybody have a chance to go over the preliminaries, I'd be glad to answer some of the questions, but I can turn it over to Jim now. So.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. Dean mentioned that it's a 1.88% increase over last year's operating budget. But if you look at your the budget request sheet, it shows at the top that our increase is $127,059, which in fact is a 5.9% increase over last year. And I would like to address the significant three major issues that or increases that are part of this budget that are not part of the normal process. First one is the request for a new employee. We've been understaffed over the years. There's several positions that have never been fulfilled as people have retired, and it's putting us in a difficult position in functioning. I'll go into that in more detail. The second item is we've been reassigned the haz waste contract from the Regional Water Authority is a $23,500 line item, which has been added to the Public Works budget that wasn't there last year. It used to be included in the recycling budget at the transfer station. It's now been assigned to Public Works because of it's solely related to town operations as opposed to the recycling operations at the transfer station, which are shared by both Guilford and Madison. So those costs are in another budget. They are I don't even know what you call those kinds of
Operating transfers.
the operating transfers. We get 50% of the cost of operating the recycling center at the transfer station from Madison. So they have their own line item for hazardous waste disposal. So they have theirs and we'll have ours. If we want of any place else to put it, Sheila has stuck it with Public Works. It's typical. Like everybody else, they stick everything
Because you're so good at it.
Yeah, it's like victims of our own success, I like to say. Third line item that increased that wasn't part of last year's budget, or at least wasn't identified. When we combined both the Public Works and the engineering budgets, we had a line item in engineering for tub grinder. That's the cost that it takes us to grind the brush and stumps, mostly brush, at the disposal site up off Goose Lane. That was lost in the transfer. There's a $25,000 line item that I've added to the contracted services element of our budget. So that line item went from last year $41,000 up to $53,500. So there was that $25,000 contributes to that increase of, again, the 5.9%. Now let's go back. So items, the haz waste and the tub grinder. Those are things that we just have to do, and there's no way around that. The new employee, we've gone through this, so I'm sure you're probably sick and tired of me going through it because I went through it last year. But I'm going to do it anyway. We have 14 plow routes. We have 14 guys on staff. 2 of the plow routes are quite extensive. One is the shoreline plow route that plows all of the roads south of 146 from Jones Bridge all the way out to Old Quarry. If you know that area of town, you know not only is a long route, there's a lot of narrow roads as part of that. It's impossible for one guy in a big truck to do it all. We need 2 men on that route constantly. We have another plow route up off Long Hill Road. It includes, again, an area of Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Shore Drive, major roads, as well as these minor roads, Putzel Avenue. Roads that are narrow, are arduous to plow and to take care of. We need 2 men on that route. So right off the bat, we're down with 14 plow routes and 14 employees. We're down 2 guys. Now we've made up part of it with we've hired a private contractor, large truck, to take one of our plow routes. The last couple of years, it's workable, but not really to the degree where we're really responsive for the route that guy handles because of the slow pace that they operate at. They're a low bidder. You know, we're stuck with the low bid issue. They're low bid. They do a job, but they don't do it timely, in a timely fashion. We don't do it thoroughly. We find that with our guys, there's a pride in your route, making sure it gets done right, gets done fast. Using a part-time plow guy, to me, it's not really the way to go. We all have some other part-time drivers. We have one other route that's covered by a transfer station employee who is an experienced truck driver and he's been very good. We don't know if he'll be there next year. His situation is not, he's not a full-time employee as of yet. And when you have part-timers, you don't know what you got. We hired one part-time truck driver. Tom took him on the route once. He went out once and he quit. He says, "I can't do that." He was scared to death. You took him on the route down on along the shore.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't understand the skill set it takes to be a good plow driver. Again, it's an arduous task. Many times after hours, in the dark, in storms and ice, it's very difficult. And it's not just sticking a plow out in front of your truck and driving. It's easy to think that way, but it's not the fact. But that's just the winter situation where we're plowing. We have, and I've gone through here, and I'll be glad to pass copies of this around. We have 11 men on a road crew. Some of the guys we use in winter for plowing snow are guys we pull out they're mechanics we pull out of the garage. They're experienced guys, they're terrific guys, and they do work for us. But they are tied up in the garage working on all the town's vehicles the rest of the year. In the summer, or after winter, which is in the spring, we have a list of tasks that we have to perform to maintain our infrastructure. We have catch basin cleaning, that takes one man. We have road sweeping, getting out and cleaning up the roads after the winter and taking the sand and cleaning up the roads from debris. That's a sweeper and a man with a truck. We have roadside mowing. Once the weather breaks and as the grass starts growing, we start getting people screaming about sight lines, they can't see at corners. We have to mow along the sides of the roads and take care of those. So that's a two-man crew. We have ongoing maintenance crews that have to take care of things like brushing, grading the dirt roads. We have a number of we have about 20 miles of roads that aren't paved roads that we maintain that of one form or fashion. So we go through and every spring and every fall we go out and we have to grade these up so they're ready for a response for emergency services. We can't leave these roads deteriorate to the point where they are so bad that you try to send an ambulance down there, they can't get to the point, or a fire truck. So we maintain those roads. We have to go pick up curb that's been broken in the course of plowing, which happens all the time. So we have these ongoing processes that we have to make to patching of roads. If you've all been around the roads for the last week or so, we had that freeze, the ground got frozen, then we got a thaw. The water that comes down after it rains has no place to go because the ground is frozen. It won't percolate down into the soil. So it gets trapped between the surface of the pavement and the ice below. And as traffic goes by, it starts working the pavement. The pavement is asphalt. It'll move, and it's just like sitting on a sponge. And as it moves, it starts cracking, water gets down there, and then you develop potholes. We've been out probably all last 6 or 7 days where time is allowed, patching roads. These are all roads that we've inherited. Where we can, we'll patch them with cold patch now. In the summertime, we'll have to go back. That cold patch is not a permanent solution. We'll have to go back and put in a hot patch and try to put a better Band-Aid on basically the road structure. So we have a whole list of maintenance things we have to do. And that doesn't take into account our major construction crew that we do. We have to have a crew, generally about 5 men that we should ideally have to prepare our roads for chip sealing or taking on some of the major construction tasks that we have planned for this year. Old Quarry Road is, and you all know because we went through the bond issue, we're going to elevate Old Quarry Road. It's a road that the residents down there have petitioned us to elevate so that it doesn't flood anymore in case of emergencies. We've in the bond issues we've allocated $1 million to do this. It's about a mile of road from Route 146 down to the entrance into Old Quarry. This summer, between June and September, we're going to take about half of that length of road, the road that really is floods, and we're gonna rebuild it. We've gone through the process of getting our DEP permits, our Corps of Engineers permits, and any other approvals that we've gotten. So we've got now a window. We have from June to September to get that done. It's a half-mile road. It's a major task. We need people to do this. We've made a commitment to the people down there. We've allocated the money. Now we have to do it. So we have to have enough guys to do that. Right now, to do that, if we've gone through, and Tom and I have gone through, we're gonna have to pull some of the men off our regular maintenance tasks to put them with this construction crew to get this work done. We'll do it, but then something else will suffer, and that's, you know, you hear this from every department, so it's not just Public Works, but, you know, we really do need, I think, if it's not this year, it's gotta be next year, the year after. We've gotta bring this crew to a full capacity, full staffing. We also have a project after we complete Old Quarry, we're gonna replace the Vineyard Point Road Bridge. It's a bridge that we've been told by the DOT that's in dire need of repair. We talked this morning, they want us to put a 10-ton limit sign on it. We try to tell them that, well, it's, you know, come September, we're gonna start taking that bridge apart and replace it, and we've gone through the public hearing on that, and we will. We've got the money allocated for it. We're getting a 45% grant from the DOT to cover the cost, and the rest of it we're gonna make up with LoCIP money, so it's not coming out of any town costs or town monies. But there's another, we go from Old Quarry to Vineyard Point Road. We got major construction projects we wanna do, because you know, this is part of what a good public works department does. That's not taking into account all the other various and sundry projects that come up during the course of a year, and I think the Board of Selectmen know better than anybody the constant requests that come in, and rightfully so. People want to be able to travel the road safely without losing a tire in a pothole or having a tree fall down and block their access. So we have a lot of work to do. We love to do it, but we do need the people to do it, and we do need, in my mind, at least 2 more people, and that's why, as part of the first request we have in this, is to increase the full-time line, salary line by 1 employee. It would be bringing somebody in as like an introductory level maintainer, a maintainer 2, and that would be $37,000. That's part of that. That's why the total request goes to 5.9. We're adding the 23.5 from the from recycling and the 25 for tub grinder, and then in addition to that, we're adding $37,793 for a maintainer. That's what brings it up to 5.9. You take those 3 items out, and we just have the regular line items, and I'll be glad to go through them. We only have a 1.88% increase in the budget. And I'll then now read down through and go through any
Jim, let me just interrupt for a second. That salary line also includes the rate increases for Teamsters, since that contract was settled a year and a half ago. This is not one of the departments that are in reserve for personnel.
Right.
So this is a true increase. Not, the other ones weren't true, but they didn't include potential salary increases. Jim, my question to you is this. If you get the additional maintainer, do we still need subcontractors in the winter?
I would eliminate that $18,200 we now
That's in the budget.
That's in the budget.
That's my question.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I would eliminate that.
Okay, good.
Yeah, because I don't think, we don't get the true value of having a full-time employee.
Okay.
It's a 2 or 3 months task, and it's, again, you know, it's not something, we could save that 18,000, we could get by without it.
And is that actually reflected in the budget?
Yeah.
The 18 is.
The 18 is already
18
in
is
here,
already
but
in
you're
there.
saying if you had the full-time employee.
You could eliminate the 18.
Right. You know, I couldn't take it out because I don't know if I'm gonna, and I've been here before.
I understand the dilemma.
Yes, so.
He's dealt with me before. So.
You're leaving those 4 part-time snowplow operators in place.
We would need the, yeah, because we have, you know, we have to have
Talking about the need for 1 more.
We're talking about the need for, we hire a guy with, a contractor with a truck, The actual cost is, I think we have $168 an hour for the truck and the whole thing. That's that $18,000 line item for snow plowing. If we get the new employee, we could eliminate that sum of money. We still would need part-timers. We still would be understaffed, but we're closer to having a full complement of people plowing snow.
And we have the equipment for the...
Yes, yes.
You know, there's been an enormous amount of publicity lately about, on the whole East Coast with Guilford. And by the way, caught an interview on NPR with someone praising what Guilford is doing in terms of the problem of water rising and land eroding. And my question is, on the short term, other than the road project you just described, are there any crises that you see developing along the shore that need to be addressed this year in the new budget?
No, but we do have 2 other roads. We're going through the process of having approved by DEP for elevating Chaffinch Island Road. We have that application submitted to DEP, and Tuttle's Point Road. They've all been subject, going back to Irene and Sandy, they've all been subject to flooding where we have people isolated. These roads are significantly underwater. Chaffinch Island Road, about once a month, just high tide. That's the lowest of the 3.
Twice a day.
Huh?
Twice a day.
Twice a day.
Regular
Well, I mean,
tide.
for when you get a
Now
high...
it's regular tide, it's
Yeah.
underwater.
So that, I mean, you know, it only serves Park and one residence, so comparing that to something, but it's still an awful burden for those people who live there. So we have to do that. We were aware of that a couple of years ago. We started the application process. We would try and get that done quickly, but again, there was no money for it. But Tuttle's Point, same thing. The state now, just for your edification, is working on a plan to elevate 146 down, you know where they clam? That's between Sachem's Head and Moose Hill Road, that low dip in there. They're looking at elevating that section of road because that is, if they can elevate that, that'll provide the outlet for Sachem's Head and to those people who can't get out under the road at Sachem's Head and 146 where it floods onto the railroad. If they eliminate that area that floods at the low point, people from Sachem's Head in an emergency can get out through Moose Hill Road. So they're looking at that. It's probably a 2 or 3 year project. They're going to put a major box culvert in there, elevate the road or a bridge. They're studying that right now, and there's a lot of environmental issues that they have to deal with because anytime you deal with that kind of a project, you're dealing with first of all, you're dealing with the DEP in terms of environmental issues, but it's also a scenic road. And as a scenic road, and it's a beautiful stretch of road. You're overlooking the salt marsh, but that's another issue they have to deal with. And those projects take a long time to develop and get designed. But it's a necessity. You can't just ignore the situation. So in 2014, no, but we have to be working on these. We can't just say, well, we don't have to do anything this year. We have to get our permits and get ourselves ready so that as soon as possible, we can address these issues like Chaffinch Island Road and Tuttle's Point.
Can you explain the hazardous waste? I'm just missing where that increase is reflected in your budget. I mean, I see the $23,500, but the existing budget has $23,100.
But we didn't have that. That line item, let me get to it.
Is that the history from the recycling?
Yes.
We moved the recycling history all over.
Reclass from last
so
year
it
is
looks
what they did.
consistent,
Yeah.
So that doesn't impact your budget as much.
And then, do we get a credit there? Is that a separate department line? Where we've taken that expense away from recycling and?
The budget is reflected in Public Works as well, so the increase there is not material. It's due to the tub grinding.
Yeah, the tub
grinding plus the new position equals about the
25,000. Yeah. But the hazardous waste disposal, that's an increase of $400.
Yeah, but that was under recycling before. That wasn't under Public Works.
It wasn't in, but
It wasn't in your budget, it was somewhere else in our overall budget.
But in comparison, finance and Sheila's department moved it over from last year, to reclassify last year's budget.
I guess it's a similar question I had for another department. Is the tub grinder a capital piece of equipment or maintenance?
That's just that's a rental.
It's a rental.
Yeah.
You don't want to buy that.
That's a reoccurring cost for 25,000 then?
Yeah,
It's
it's
a big
usually-
piece of machinery.
It's a big piece of
Okay.
machinery.
We had historically been using services from the South Central Regional Planning Agency. Their tub grinder went down. This last year, we had to go out to bid to get that service. And what, in the past, we used to be able to do it twice a year, but this year, I think we're gonna just do it once a year and just accumulate the brush if we can,
Okay.
and then
then-
keep that price down.
Did I understand correctly, if you get a new maintainer, potentially you might reduce one of the other lines by
Yes.
18,000? That's
Yeah,
the
that would be the-
part-time and
that would be-
seasonal salary?
Right.
Okay.
So going through salaries we've dealt with, and Joe was pointed out that their Teamsters contract has been settled, so that's not gonna be subject to change. It's
Excuse me a
settled for-
minute, Jim. Sandy, you're okay? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Labor work orders, that's a credit that comes to the department from work that we do for other departments, whether it's police or fire or park and rec or, the transfer stations. When we work on their equipment, we charge them, so we don't absorb that cost. So we get a credit about $5,500. We've been carrying that for a long time. Part-time and seasonal salaries, these are the part-time of the guys, basically. We have inspectors up at the brush and disposal area, to make sure people don't bring stuff in there that's not supposed to go there. That's a pretty straightforward thing. And we do have some, in that, the seasonal salaries, relief drivers for snow plowing, which we would need, and that's additional money in there too. Boards, commission secretaries, pretty straightforward. Overtime, we just an estimate. Winter, we have approximately $700 a storm in labor costs, 13 storms, 8 hours. We come up with, and you can see the calculation. We do have, in addition to that, summer discretionary overtime line, four days times 8 men yields 8. It should be equals 32 hours times the price of $37.50 an hour, about $1,200 for that item. And we need that many times the last year or two, and you can all appreciate. We get guys called out in the middle of the night, the tree blocking Goose Lane. And so you have to send a couple of guys out there in the middle of the night to cut the tree up and pull off the road for public safety. So that's expense that we do incur. The expense and travel line item is pretty straightforward. Most of that money is spent when we have guys work through the crew work through the night. And we've had this a number of times already this year. You have to give them something to eat. I mean, so we make provisions to have them be fed in the nighttime.